you can't do anything on your own in multifamily. Like you said, you need experts, and they're all going to kind of operate in their own specific zone of genius. And that's what makes these deals fun, actually. You're able to focus on what you do best, and then you can bring on others to focus on their respective strengths.
Hey there, I am Dr. Jason Ballara, and this is the Know Your Why podcast, where we explore the why behind success. Every week, I meet with real estate investors, veterinary entrepreneurs, mindset coaches, authors, and fitness professionals to uncover their why and how it drives them on the winding road to success. What is your why?
Hi everyone, I'm Jason Ballara, and this is the Know Your Why podcast. Today I'm here with Marc Weisi. Marc is a multifamily owner-operator with a deep background in financial analysis, modeling, and technology systems. Marc is a CFA and has worked on Wall Street for the past 10 years. I think we're going to talk a little bit about that transition. Marc, I'm going to stop there on your bio because I do want to let you tell your story. But first, I just want to say thanks for coming on the show. Thanks for taking out the time. I know it's a Friday afternoon and you're on the East Coast, so it's even later for you. I appreciate it very much.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no, it's a pleasure. I follow your podcast and have listened, from time to time, and really enjoy the content and speakers you come on. So this is a real honor.
Thank you. Well, let's start with your story. Tell people, kind of your background and how you got started into real estate investing.
Yeah, for sure. So I got started in real estate in 2017. So I guess my story as far as real estate goes kind of starts there. I come from I live in North Jersey, just outside of New York City, and come from my father came to this country in the 80s. So immigrant background, second generation. So I think in a lot of ways that's really helped me in terms of exposing me to different cultures and also mindsets. So one of the things that a lot of, I think, children of immigrants have in terms of mentalities is like this focus on education and, trying to take all the sacrifices that their parents have made to get them to the United States and be able to take that ball further downfield. And so for a lot of kids of immigrants, even though their parents may be entrepreneurs or have that entrepreneurial spirit, a lot of them are taught either implicitly or explicitly that they have to, go to college, get advanced degrees, certifications, things like that to try to get ahead and work in corporate America. And, there's definitely merit to that. So that's kind of the path that I followed. But very early in my career, I saw that maybe there's a different way to approach things. And that maybe, the mentality that got them to where they are in terms of entrepreneurship and self-reliance, maybe that's an alternate path to kind of creating financial freedom and financial independence and all the stuff that I think a lot of us real estate investors do it for. So started to learn on my own, really picked up the book Rich Dad Poor Dad. I know a lot of folks credit that book in terms of enlightening them about, financial literacy, assets, all that stuff, and became really enamored. I was already working on Wall Street at that time, so was familiar with stocks, bonds, all of the traditional kind of public investments that are out there, but got turned on to real estate and just the idea of tangible assets that just grow over time, regardless of you doing anything essentially. And so started to dig in with that and nobody in my immediate family was really investing in real estate, but started to reach out to people that I knew that were parents of friends, friends of friends, that kind of thing. And realized that it's a really consistent way to build wealth. You don't necessarily have to be a rocket scientist to buy property and to operate it well and then just to hold it long term. And saw that people could build pretty massive amounts of wealth just by doing that simple plan. And so bought my first place in 2017 and kind of was off to the races from there.
Yeah, it's a couple really interesting things that you mentioned there. And one, I think, and I guess I don't know that it's exclusive to children of immigrants, although I feel like that, my friends that I know in that position, their parents have a very, as you mentioned, like very specific way that they see, sort of life getting better for their, sort of carrying that generational hard work and sacrifice on to, continue what your parents and their parents may have started. I think it happens. So, in a number of different families and cultures. The interesting thing is, I, I I often wonder, like, is that a generational thing, in the sense that, like, the years, the decades that were involved. But it's, I mean, it is an interesting thing to kind of think about, like, generally, generationally, what, the expectations for what we might want for our kids, going forward, versus like what our parents wanted for us and their parents wanted for them. Because I started for my kids are really young. I started, a college savings program, set up one of those when my son was born. And interestingly, like, it was about a year after he was born that I really got into real estate more seriously. And then I didn't even start that for my daughter, because I was like, yeah, maybe traditional education isn't even what I think they should do anymore. Or, like, we'll figure it out when we get there, kind of thing. Like, I think I can invest in real estate and maybe do better than that. And so it the bottom line is to say, like, I think it's the expectations and ideas of what kind of the right path is from a career standpoint might be shifting. And I don't know, do you agree? Do you think that is generational, or do you think it's more specific to certain cultures?
I think it's probably the answer is probably somewhere in between. I think a lot of the points that you brought up definitely ring true. In generations past, they had things like pensions where you work a certain amount of time, and for most jobs, you're going to be able to retire and live a comfortable lifestyle. I mean, even my grandfather, on my mother's side, so he was, was in this country. His parents were in this country, so not an immigrant. He was working. He was the only breadwinner in of that family, and he was able to support 8 kids. They live tight, of course, but
Yeah, yeah,
that's not exactly possible today. So I think a lot of the financial insecurity, in a sense of not having that kind of defined benefit plan type setup with our
right.
employers today, really forces people. The onus is kind of on individuals to make sure that they're managing their own financial future. And so I think as a result of that, along with a couple of other things, we had back in '08, we had probably the biggest seismic shift in financial markets and job markets of our generation. So a lot of people were stung by that. And then you add COVID to the mix. So I just think that there's a lot of uncertainty as far as, people's long-term careers and financial stability. You also have things like automation and AI infringing potentially on people's, perception of where their career is going to be in 5, 10 years. So I just feel like there's a lot of factors that are weighing on people, that are forcing them to say, okay, maybe is Wall Street really, is, the 401k, are stocks and bonds, the traditional route, really the best way to go about things? Or even, corporate America, is it really safe to have a job in corporate America today, as opposed to go the entrepreneurial route?
Yeah, no, those are great points. The pension model is virtually gone. I know there are still some scenarios, mostly I think government jobs, where you can still have some level of pension, but I have heard talk of that the 401k might not be a thing, in the next decade. So it's just, things change over time, and I think that the shift to entrepreneurship for a lot of people is very much about control, right? It's about, whether it's financial control, time control, whatever it is, like, because I think a lot of us don't, and we'll talk about the shift from W-2 to pure entrepreneur, but a lot of us don't work less when we become entrepreneurs. In fact, we often work more, and we might actually make less money in the beginning, but you have control over all of those things. So it's a different, it comes, for me, I think, in a lot of ways, just becomes about control. But let's, before we get into that, I definitely want to, sort of dig in more on your past and your journey into real estate. You said you started in 2017. And how did that look at the beginning for you? Because if you were working on Wall Street, so some people, that's all they know in terms of their investing options, and they stick with that, and kind of let someone else handle it for them. But you were there in the mix and still thought, hey, I should add real estate to this. Maybe talk a little bit about what made you think that, and kind of how that journey has gone for you.
Yeah, so I'm, just like everybody, I'm kind of a product or a creation of my experiences. And I graduated out of college in 2011. So I came into a job market that was very shaky. I entered Wall Street at probably one of the worst times to be working at a large bank. And so the experiences I had very early on in my career were very formative in the sense that, I saw a lot of people losing their job that had been working basically in the same positions or at the same banks for years, sometimes decades, and then suddenly had to figure out how to, make ends meet. So I saw that fear in people really struck a chord with me, at a fairly young age, where I was like, okay, I don't want to be in that position when I have a family to provide for, when I have dependents and other obligations. So at that point, it kind of was an emotional thing that I said, I got to figure out a way to safeguard myself and kind of build this moat that so that no matter what, I'll have income coming in to support my lifestyle. So I bought initially a condo that I house hacked. I wasn't really, as well versed in real estate. I just knew I got to buy something that I can live in. If I can rent out a few rooms in it, great. I'll be able to offset some of my mortgage. And so did that. Took some, definitely some lessons along the way, and was like, okay, how do I do this now on steroids? How do I, supercharge this essentially? So bought another condo, bought a single family, and then kind of landed on multifamily. I was like, okay, if I can get two heads under one roof, or two, units under one roof, and kind of safeguard myself again against vacancies and, some of the fixed overhead, I can spread that out across more units. It makes sense. So at that point is when my capital ran out. And like a lot of real estate investors, you run into this wall of not having enough capital to do deals, and you figure out ways to get around that, whether it's creative finance or creative, ways to do deals, or finding partners. In my case, it was that I found somebody that was in my area who was looking to do similar things as me, had similar goals, and had a different skill set as me. So finding partners that have complementary skill sets, I think, is a big thing in terms of progressing. And so he had a background. He was an engineer, had a background in construction, and was overseeing massive capex projects. So I said, okay, this is great. I'm the finance numbers guy. We'll put him in charge of the construction. He'll oversee the rehabs, and we'll go. So we did some smaller multifamily, and at that point we said, okay, it's time to graduate into commercial multifamily, 5+ units, and really we had seen how that asset class is much more in your control in terms of being able to control the value. You talked about control before. I think going from residential multifamily to commercial multifamily, you start to realize that, okay, me saving these dollars and cents, to the bottom line, is creating massive upside on the back end in terms of valuation. And so we saw that model, and from there started to educate, and came in contact with a lot of people who were doing much, much bigger deals. I mean, they were doing multifamily on a massive scale, and so we said, okay, if these folks can do it, why can't we do it? So started coaching in a mentorship program, actually a mutual friend of ours and partner of yours. And so we went down the education route, and after it took us about a year and a half, maybe 2 years to get our first deal, and then kind of went from there.
Yeah, and I think that journey is what a lot of us do, right? It's like, if you realize, hey, real estate seems to make sense. Let me try something, right? And you mentioned, 2011, like when I'm not sure if they called it house hacking in 2011. I know for sure when I first bought real estate in I think it was in 2000. I was like, same thing, like small, just I bought a house, and I'm like, I can't afford this mortgage. I guess I got to get some roommates. And it's like, but I knew it made sense to me that owning something was the right thing to do. And so you're like, you get in that position where you're like, how can I make this work? And it's it's about control, like we talked about. It's about problem solving. And then as you move through that progression of single family, small multi, and then into commercial multi, it it's the same thing. You're just solving those problems at scale, and kind of finding partners. As you mentioned, you found your partner, and having those complementary skill sets. But like, as you grow into commercial multifamily, it's your partners that you might have in your company or do that deal with, but also you're partnering with third party property management. You're partnering with an SEC attorney, CPA. So you start to like really learn about building a team. And I wanted to maybe get your take on how you see that process and how you approach that process, whether that's with the first partner that knew about construction. How did you do that? Maybe some lessons you've learned along the way. What's been your experience there?
Yeah, that's a great point. And there's a reason why pretty much any multifamily book, any credible multifamily book, they'll have like a chapter or at least a few pages designated to go over kind of how to build that team, because it really, you can't do anything on your own in multifamily. Like you said, you need experts, and they're all going to kind of operate in their own specific zone of genius. And that's what makes these deals fun, actually. You're able to focus on what you do best, and then you can bring on others to focus on their respective strengths. So for us, the benefit was that we were a part of a community. We were part of a mastermind community where you had a coach. Then you had other people that were doing deals. Some of them were a little bit further ahead of you. Some of them were, maybe taking those first few steps. So we could rely on that community, but we could also rely on the network of our coaches to be able to refer folks who are credible to us to work with. So I always think that, you can, success leaves clues is a quote, and you can follow the breadcrumbs of people who have been here already. And kind of, so the way that looked for us was, asking our coaches, okay, we're looking for lenders to do XYZ. We're looking for PMs in this specific area. Have you worked with anybody? Would you recommend anybody? And so by that, we were able to kind of get a pre-vetted list of professionals to work with. And I always like to think of like, I'm stealing this quote from somebody. I definitely heard it somewhere, but rock stars work with rock stars. So the idea that, you find somebody that's super credible and, has a great track record, and then you start to kind of take the next step from there. Okay, you meet a lender that's really, an authority in the space. Okay, who do you know in terms of property managers that are, killing it in your respective markets? So from there, we kind of built the team. Took, we switched markets a few times, but, each of those were kind of, I would say, reps for us to get in terms of building those teams locally, to the point where we got really good at it. And we got, kind of questionnaires that we put together in terms of, we're going to vet lenders, we're going to vet, insurance brokers, mortgage brokers, whatever the case may be. And we had kind of like a script to work off of. But initially it was all referral based.
Yeah. And it is, I mean, I'm sure there are other industries that are similar, but it is very much a, sort of network based, referral based type of industry. Mostly good. Sometimes I think sometimes that can, you have to, that whole trust but verify thing, right? You can get referred to someone and find out like, maybe it's not the right fit for you. Maybe they're a great fit for this other position, might not be the right fit for you. We've run into that with property management, where it's like someone said they were great, but that was a different market, a different asset class, that kind of thing. So when as you've journeyed into multifamily now, we talked a little bit before we started recording, but you're still working in a W-2 job. How do you balance it, and what do you think are maybe kind of the pros and cons of staying with that job? Because there's a lot of debate out there about, should you cut the W-2 job out as soon as possible and sort of go all in, because then you're really committed, but sometimes there's definitely some downsides to that. So what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I definitely want to, I guess, preface this by the fact that, like, everybody's situation is different. So I don't think that there's prescriptive, advice out there that's going to really apply to everybody. Everybody's job situation or financial situation is going to be a little bit different. So you just have to kind of, like, what I've done historically is just talk to a lot of people and try to find people that you really resonate with, and we're in similar situations, and kind of learn from their experience. But for me, I mean, the way that looks is, honestly, it's not easy. I work a pretty demanding W-2. I know there are a lot of people in this space that also work pretty demanding W-2s. I think that's kind of one of the things that attracts a lot of people to larger multifamily, is like, we're all, super driven, super diligent people. So, you tend to find a lot of people who are, doctors or veterinarians or engineers, things like that, who are excelling at their respective field, that are then, applying those same qualities to real estate. So everybody's going to be a little bit different. For me, it just means, setting aside the right amount of time where I feel like I'm getting enough done in real estate. For me, that means setting aside, a couple hours every day, either prior to work or after work. From time to time, I'll have to take calls during work as well, whether it be, PM calls, calls with brokers, things like that. But I guess the short answer is just find a way to make it work. If you think the sacrifice of being an active investor, an operator, and that's not right for everybody, by the way. If you want to go the passive way and invest with somebody that is doing this full time, that's definitely a good route as well. But if you decide that the sacrifice is worth it, then you'll figure out a way to work it into your schedule. And most weekends I'll spend, a few hours every, Saturday and Sunday also doing on real estate because I know what my goal is. I know what the bigger picture is about. And for me, that sacrifice makes sense. Um, in terms of your second question about the pros and cons of doing this while having a W-2, I think the first pro and really the biggest one for me is having that safety net, knowing that, if all else fails, I don't have to do a deal. Especially when you're bringing on and representing other investors, you're acting as a fiduciary for other people's money. I think it's really important that you're diligent about what deals you decide to take on, and not necessarily doing a deal to collect an acquisition fee or whatever the case may be. um, I think that that's not the right way to approach it, and being really patient is kind of the best way to do things. So having W-2 allows me that ability to do that. Also, if something were ever to go wrong, like I've had deals that I did with my partner when we were doing just joint ventures where, something pops up and we didn't expect it. And that's normal when you're starting off a business. I was able to plug the gap because I had that, that income still coming in. So it kind of is, a little bit of a safety net for you to learn along the way. Obviously, you want to get that done you want to learn with your own money, not be learning on the job with investor money. But I would say that's the biggest pro. In terms of con, it's really what I spoke about. It's you're going to not have as many hours as somebody who's doing this full time. A lot of people who you're working with, we talked about the team just now. They're going to be working, typically 9 to 5, 8 to 5. So it's going to be difficult, especially if you're communicating via phone, to really, connect with those folks during the day. If you do have a pretty rigorous job during the day, and then you're going to have to make sacrifices, whether it be working earlier or later, or just finding ways to fit this into your schedule. I think those would be the biggest pros and cons for me.
Yeah, and I agree 100%. You mentioned it before, but there's a there's a tendency in the entrepreneur world to point out the fact that a W-2 job is not as safe as we all think it is. Like or that like people tend to think like you very easily, something that the job market changes, you could get laid off, as you mentioned. Like there's technology, AI is coming. There's reasons why our jobs and the need for our jobs could change over time, and that's what what we refer to. But at the same time, if when you start out as an entrepreneur, you're going to work a lot and probably not make a lot of money from it, right? The idea is that it's a early investment for that sort of long term, greater return, and again, the control. And so keeping that W-2 job as long as you can is and you should make sure that your employer is okay with this, sort of the time that you've got to spend there. There's some logistics to it, but I think most employers will be reasonable about, the needs that you might have. And you're like, I got to take a 30-minute phone call in the middle of the day, like build your schedule around that. And I think with the introduction of a lot of work from home type of positions, that's become a lot more maybe palatable to employers. I think the inefficiency of the sort of 9 to 5 job being at a desk like has been realized, and like you probably can get the same amount of work done in 5 hours as you're sort of forced to be somewhere for 8 hours. So I think a lot of what has happened over the last, since 2020 with COVID and work from home changes has made people look at the workspace a little bit differently, and that may be conducive to combining your W-2 and your entrepreneurship goals, and you have as you said, that safety net of, something goes wrong, well, I'm still making income over here that I can, sort of help. I would say the other thing I would add to that is the W-2 income. If even if you're able to manage it and your entrepreneurship, your real estate investing is making money, well, guess what? You can take that W-2 income and use it to invest in sort of essentially increase the velocity of your money by having multiple sources. So I think it's there tends to be a this excitement about being able to leave your job, and if you just hate your job and you're not making any money there, like, that's probably a good goal to have. But if it's a job that you're okay with and you make decent money, you should probably try to find a way to, as long as you can, combine them together, is my feeling. And as someone who has, sort of done it too, I think it makes sense to to keep that, safety net if you're able to.
Yeah, and I think too, one of the things that we talked about is raising private capital. I mean, nothing says that you truly believe in a deal or are invested in a deal like actually investing in the deal, actually putting your
Right.
own money, where your
Yep.
mouth is. So I've been fortunate enough to be able to do that in all the deals that we do, which I think is a great thing, a great sign of confidence for any investor that will invest alongside us. Is, hey, that Mark is going to be putting his actual money, that he's worked hard at his W-2 for. Um, so that, and then also the other side that I didn't really mention was the fact that you're more bankable. I mean, I know that personal
Yep.
balance sheet only, gets you so far, but it does matter in a lot of these deals to lenders. So I think having that W-2 coming in can be viewed somewhat favorably by a lender if you're trying to qualify for a loan.
Yeah. No, I 100% agree. It's definitely, I mean, this is a thing that, people may or may not understand, but a lot of times when you're buying commercial real estate, you need to have, there's typically one of those people on that team is called a key principal, and they're sort of the loan signer, the one that allows you to qualify for the loan. But having that can be multiple people, and having a job, especially if you make a good income, like, having that will help with that process. And as you said, make you more bankable, allow you to qualify for these loans a lot easier. Not, you're not having to worry about it. And because unless you've been in real estate or entrepreneurship a long time and you've developed this, track record with a high net worth, having that good job is actually really pretty looked upon favorably by the banks and the lenders.
Absolutely.
Um, so, Mark, I think kind of a fascinating journey, and I want to touch on the questions that I ask every guest. And the first one is based on the name of the show being Know Your Why. So I always like to know, what is your why? What's kind of driving you? What are you trying to use to push you towards bigger and bigger goals and success?
So for me, it's a sense of responsibility. It's kind of what we started the conversation talking about, knowing that, you know, I was fortunate enough to go to the Middle East and see where my father grew up and see the conditions that he lived in as a kid, when I was that same age. And it's like, night and day from the lottery that is being born in the United States. I know Warren Buffett says that, and I definitely agree with him there. So feeling the sense of responsibility of, hey, that sacrifice was made. And, I'm sure massive sacrifices were made even before that to get me where I am today. So it's now my responsibility to kind of push the ball forward, as it were, for the next generation. Although I don't have children, thinking about long-term kind of legacy and what you leave behind, and not just for my children, but being able to make impact on other kids that are growing up. One thing I'm really passionate about is financial literacy, and teaching children financial literacy. So trying to lend my time to programs like that. I think that's what kind of drives me. Is it's not just about me; it's about this thing that's bigger. And I think that's what actually is a really powerful motivator for a lot of people. Whether you're in the army and you have that sense of something greater than you, or it's your employer, or whatever the case may be. Just thinking about yourself, you'll only probably go so far. But I think if you have a larger why, that can be a really powerful motivator for getting the things done and making the tough decisions every day.
Yeah, Yeah, and it you talked about hey, you've got a demanding job, and you're building your real estate portfolio around that, and so you need that sense of purpose that to keep, because it's not easy, right? Some there are long days, and it's a lot of work, and it's not going to be instant success, and so you have to have that kind of north star leading you to keep pushing through when there are some challenges that you come up against, and it's you know it's not the thing that maybe struck me the most about these last couple of years with the market shift and interest rates and all of that is everybody talks about, like, if you're a business owner, you're an entrepreneur, like, you're going to encounter problems, and that's true. You're going to encounter problems. We are problem solvers. We're putting puzzles together. What I think gets left out of saying that, because that sounds like almost cool, like, oh, I'm a problem solver. I think what gets left out of that is, my sense is, things go wrong quickly, but they get better slowly. And so you have to understand that being that problem solver isn't like, oh, I just snap my fingers and I fixed, right? Like, you have like the interest rates started going up. We're almost on 2 years now, right? Like, it's a long time for people that are battling those conditions to keep battling, right? But that's what you have to do. You have to keep battling and going forward. So it for me, it's I started the podcast before that all happened, but the name of the podcast has almost become more um, meaningful to me because we're in a down market, and it's like we're not doing as many deals, and it's like everything's just slowed down, and you have to continue to manage the assets, and do everything you can to be that good steward of people's money if you have investors.
Yeah, yeah, I love it. I love it. I know there's another quote out there, and I'm terrible with, kind of citing quotes, but something like excellence is not an act, but a habit. And so I feel like, if you're trying to achieve excellence in any realm, it's a consistent thing that you have to plow at every single day. You got to get up and eat that frog. And it's not going to be fun. I know, on social media, sometimes you could be following somebody that where multifamily looks so sexy and you can achieve these massive returns, but what doesn't get seen is everything that's kind of below the water, all the iceberg that's kind of not revealed there.
Right.
That goes on behind the scenes, the late nights, the early mornings, all those sacrifices.
Yeah. Yeah. 100% agree. Um, Tell us something about yourself that isn't common knowledge, special skill, a hobby, anything that you're comfortable sharing with the audience to let them know you better.
Yeah, so right now I'm working on something that only a few of my friends really know about, but I'm trying to really improve my Spanish. I'm probably at an intermediate level right now, but really trying to get to an advanced level. And part of it is just my interest in travel and specifically wanting to travel to parts of Central and South America. And I've witnessed firsthand the difference in when you go somewhere and you're a foreigner, when people see that you're trying and trying to assimilate to their culture and trying to really, honor and respect their customs. And so it's kind of part and parcel of that.
What are you doing? What are you using to learn?
So I studied in high school, and then since then, in my area, it's a very Spanish-speaking area, so you can kind of get by just speaking Spanish, believe it or not. So I get a lot of opportunity every day. But then I also, from time to time, I'll try out different platforms. So there's one platform that I've tried called italki. It's spelled italki.com, where you can seek out different professors, teachers from around the world. Really awesome platform. And you can work with one person consistently. There's one that I've been using more recently that's called Baselang, and it's kind of just a set fee every month, and then you can schedule classes really anytime you want. Really, almost 24 hours a day with teachers around the world, and take as many classes as you want. They have a set curriculum, but if you want to design a curriculum of your own, they're happy to accommodate that too. So that's been really good because right now my schedule, as we were talking about, is very hectic. So
Yeah.
needing somebody that's going to be flexible, it's worked really well for me.
Oh, that's amazing. I'll have to check those out. That's a that's one of the things, like, you have that list of things I would like to be better at, and
Yeah.
certainly I would like to be better at learning Spanish would be actually very helpful. I live in Southern California. I would love
Oh
for
yeah.
my kids to there are Spanish immersion schools. Like, I think it'll be, they'll get exposed to it well. But like, I can read the books, like the children's books, and like learn from that. But to be able to take kind of learn that with them, I think would be super cool. So I'll have to check those out.
Yeah.
uh, when people hear this and they want to reach out to you, what's the best way?
For sure. So you can reach out via email. My email address is marc@investwithmaple.com. That's INVEST with WITH, maple as in the tree, MAPLE.com. You can also find me on Instagram. My name is spelled MARC underscore Weisi, WEISI. Or check out our website, www.investwithmaple.com.
Awesome. And we'll put that stuff in the show notes so people have it. My last question for you, Marc: what advice would you give to someone who hears this, they're inspired by you, and they want to get started in real estate? What would you tell them would be some good first steps?
Yeah, so I think education is a big part of it for me. We tried the method of kind of, going forward and taking action and banging your head against the wall and then kind of regrouping and doing it again. You can make a lot of progress that way. But I think in terms of really fast progress, going with others, basically, working with either a coach or a mastermind or just a group of other people who have been there, done that. I think that's really, really important. And you'll get to where you want to go a lot faster and with a lot less stress.
Yeah, I agree. Mentorship has been a huge part of it for me. I think you can combine the two, right? Like mentorship, education with taking action, and just kind of, but it will cut that learning curve a lot, and it'll save you a lot of frustration, and honestly probably save you money and time and things like that as well. So I love that advice. Marc, this was great. Thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your story. I think people are going to get a lot of value out of this, so thank you very much.
Really appreciate it. This was a blast. Thanks for having me, Jason.
Yeah, absolutely. Folks listening, I know you're going to love this episode. Please connect with Marc, and also please like, rate, and review the show so we can have more great guests. And thank you all for listening.
Hey there, I am Dr. Jason Ballara, and this is the Know Your Why podcast, where we explore the why behind success. Every week, I meet with real estate investors, veterinary entrepreneurs, mindset coaches, authors, and fitness professionals to uncover their why and how it drives them on the winding road to success. What is your why?